So you all know movie toys are my jam. They are my comfort zone, my favorite Transformers toys. And since 2007, with the first movie, Hasbro's consistently put out movie figures with like certain breaks here or there. And you already know how I feel about the Age of Extinction toy line and what it meant to me, so movie toys are very much integrated into my life. The best of that era for me is the 2009 to 2011 stage. From Revenge of the Fallen to Hunt for the Decepticons / Autobot Alliance to Dark of the Moon. And then a few years ago, the movie toy line was reinvented into Studio Series, giving us, quote, the best, unquote, mainline representation of characters, giving characters who never got toys actual toys, and giving us a new way to buy movie toys instead of movie-based lines having all the films in one toy line, which I actually really appreciate. So here I have two examples of some Studio Series toys and their old movie toy counterparts, kinda. So Sideswipe here is the Dark of the Moon version, but the Studio Series one I have is the Revenge of the Fallen version. The reason I'm doing this is because A, I don't have an old Revenge of the Fallen Sideswipe, and B, if you flip the Dark of the Moon one around, you get the same engineering as the Studio Series toy, mostly, so the comparison kind of works great, actually. Now, I've purposefully kept the Studio Series and the old toys separate from one another in shots because the first and the biggest difference between these two is their size. So here they are next to each other, and man, inflation has definitely taken its toll, hasn't it? Bumblebee is the biggest culprit here because it's so much smaller than Canon Bumblebee, but like it's better. Canon Bumblebee isn't a great mold. It feels like it's just a Bumblebee that was made to get more Bumblebees on the shelf. I believe this was the mold they used for the preview toy for Revenge of the Fallen, so that might be why. There isn't anything interesting with the alt mode other than it's a cool car that does the front end correctly, Studio Series. Otherwise, I think the Studio Series one just looks a lot more crisp. The stripes look a lot cleaner, and the yellow doesn't look very plasticky as the old Canon Bumblebee's yellow does. Also, on a side note, my Leader Megatron review, I called the toy vintage, like the movie Megatron. And the reason I did that was because certain stores are classifying movie toys as vintage now, and I noticed the other day that TF Toys is doing that too. So these are technically vintage according to some stores. That makes me feel old. One of the things I prefer a lot more about Canon Bumblebee over the Studio Series one is the lack of panel lines, because its transformation is a lot more simple. There aren't as many moving outer parts, and therefore not as many panel lines in the car, but it's hardly a huge issue because that's something that's always going to be apparent on Transformers. They have to transform. That's just how it works. I do also prefer the size of Canon Bumblebee's car mode to the Studio Series one, even though the Studio Series one scales better with other toys. You know, I don't really care about scale all the time, so this just doesn't matter to me. I am not the biggest fan of the pearl blue plastic used for the windshields, though, on Canon Bumblebee. Yes, I know, clear plastic, but the dark tint on the Studio Series one looks so much better than that weird pearlescent blue that they used. If they had used like a dark gray, I think it would have looked better, but the blue just feels off. Both cars have their merits, but I do prefer the Studio Series one overall in its paint, shaping, color, and, well, I was just going to say feel, but Canon Bumblebee feels hella better, more solid, and more durable because it's good Revenge of the Fallen plastic, which was some of the best other than Movie 1 and Unicron trilogy. Now on to Sideswipe, and these two toys are actually extremely similar. Again, if you flip the Dark of the Moon one over and around, you can see that they share the same basic engineering when it comes to their transformations. So they are very similar toys, but I hate the Dark of the Moon toy. I genuinely don't like it. It looks super bland. The floor is see-through in the inside of the car. It has trouble staying together sometimes, and the MagTech weapon, if I still had it, is one of the most boring ones out there. It doesn't do anything interesting like flip out a saw or extend out a cannon into another cannon. It just flips a blade out at you, and it's not even a good blade. It's a boring blade. Yay, fun. The Studio Series one, on the other hand, looks so nice. The silver paint on display here is super lush. The iconic Corvette Stingray split window is super clean at the back. The sculpting on this with the swoops and the curves looks a lot nicer than the Dark of the Moon one. Oh, and props to the weapon storage. Both toys store their blades on the side. However, the guns on the Studio Series one become extra exhausts because he needs extra exhausts apparently. But I do love how they're able to incorporate the guns into the alt mode just by making them exhaust. It reminds me of old Generations toys. I love that. And in this instance, the plastic on the Studio Series one feels much better than the Dark of the Moon one. It just feels nicer in hand. I think it's the paint. But yeah, the Studio Series one really made me not like the Dark of the Moon one even more than I already did. I'm a huge fan of old movie toys, but I can't deny that the new ones in this regard are much better. They tick more boxes for me than the old ones do, and they are a lot more enjoyable to me. Transformations on the Bumblebees are very different. Canon Bumblebee feels the most generic and clunky. Everything moves in chunks, but like, it's not the most satisfying thing, and the back kibble ends up looking super dumb. Studio Series Bumblebee has spun the Last Night Bumblebee transformation and heavily modified it to be more fluid. However, I do wish the backpack could fold into the torso like the Last Night and MPM toys, because I do like how clean that looks. Dark of the Moon Sideswipe is just bland. It's just so bland. Like, the toy itself is so boring. The way that the blades are done is cool, I guess, but the rest of it, the backpack doesn't tab in, and it's really annoying. The roof, or not the roof, the hood likes to fall off all the time. The legs are super loose on my copy. It's not fun. The Studio Series Sideswipe has a lot of things colliding with itself while transforming because it's got that added roof section, but it's not the worst thing. And it has a lot of the same engineering as the Dark of the Moon toy, but without all the tabbing issues, the toy itself is a lot more pleasant to transform than its predecessor, that's for sure. Now, this comparison definitely helps show the evolution of the movie toys. The older ones, while I still love them, are clunky as hell. So with Bumblebee here, I find it's no contest. The Studio Series one, yes, it's smaller, but it has a lot more detail, better proportions, and much nicer posing. The Canon Bumblebee feels a lot more solid, like the plastic is great, but it's a very chubby looking dude. Like, the torso is made up of the seats and the dashboard, so it makes him look chunkier than the on-screen model. The arms are really spindly, not to mention their gorilla arms, Jesus. And the legs. Well, the legs are the same generic legs we saw all the way up until Age of Extinction, just with springs in them. And he has no thigh swivels. Canon B does have the shoulder cannons, hence the name, and opposable thumbs, so there's that. I don't understand the point of the opposable thumbs. Like, it's cool, but what are you gonna do with them? I would rather you take the posable thumb out and put a wrist swivel. That would have been nicer. Studio Series B though, this looks so much better. The gray is not my favorite, I won't lie, but I know there are several other versions of this toy out there, so there's one for everyone, just not Studio Series 01. The tooling on this looks sharp and all the details have a place. Yeah, it could be a bit, you could use a bit more paint, but for the most part, it looks great. A lot better than the Canon one anyways. The new one does have plastic issues with the doors though. I've heard many reports of the door hinges breaking because of the clear material, so that's something to watch out for. I haven't encountered that issue yet, but that's because I'm being super careful with them. So I urge you to also be super careful with it. Like, you know, Studio Series car dropkick has that same problem, and I haven't transformed him since I heard about it. So you also get his hand cannon and a Shia LaBeouf. So the accessories are actually quite nice. He comes with a tiny Shia LaBeouf. That's just funny. I'm not the biggest fan of how far the arm guards stick out, so I don't extend them when I display the toy, but hey, the options are good to have. Posing on Canon B is very not good. The wrists, the waist, thighs, or ankles are just missing, plus the gorilla arms are annoying as hell, but hey, posable thumbs. I don't know why that's there. And I also totally forgot to mention that he can pooth, which is absolutely amazing. 10 out of 10 better than the Studio Series one. Here's the pooth. The Studio Series toy is so much better at posing. And it looks great too when you're getting it in other angles. The doors are also extremely expressive and give him a lot more character when articulating the toy. Plus, I love the range of the ball-jointed elbows. The wings, however, do get caught on the back kibble quite a bit when you go to move them. So that's something to be careful of. You don't want to force anything because you might, break the doors off. But I still love how expressive they are. Now on to Sideswipe, and that Dark of the Moon one looks so bad. It's so bland next to the new one, and even next to the Revenge of the Fallen one, if I had the Revenge of the Fallen one. Let's just get on with the Dark of the Moon one. The gray sucks. It looks so unfinished. The joints are really wibbly even when they were strong. The blades are always on the arms, which is something I've always not been a fan of. The feet aren't as stable, so he loves to just topple, and the backpack, it just doesn't tab into place and falls off all the time. Really annoying. The coloring on the torso and the head too look really knockoffy. Like, they give off that vibe. One thing that I don't particularly like is how the whole torso is just, it looks like one solid piece, because it is. And in the film, the Revenge of the Fallen and Studio Series ones, at least, the details are either more well-defined or actual car parts to make it look as such. This just looks like a solid block of nothing, and it doesn't really help the toy. It looks unfinished. It looks like someone sculpted it and stuck it on the front. That's what it looks like to me. The Studio Series one, on the other hand, uses the actual back of the car as the chest, with the panels individually moving, and I love that. I love how the blades are removable, and it comes with his cannons, makes him go great with Ironhide. I also love how stable he is and how balanced his feet are on such weird feet. I also like this approach to the back wings. Sure, it's not as posable, but at least they don't stick out as far. I like how close they are to the body. The paintwork on this figure is also so much better, and it feels a lot more solid than the Dark of the Moon one. I'm glad budget went into the paint as opposed to just making it bigger, because it definitely helps here. Posing on the Dark of the Moon one is pretty good, all things considered, minus the no waist or wrists. Ankles aren't really needed because he has wheels for feet, but the posing feels all right on a whole. I wish the knees could bend like properly a little bit further, but they don't because the seats are in the way. So you sacrifice the interior for the knees, give or take. Oh well. The Studio Series one takes that and elevates it. The shoulder pads giving him a lot more expression, and the legs being a bit more solid. The wings aren't as posable, but it's not bad. They still get out of the way enough for him to look great. I just love those chest pieces. The back of the car sitting there are actual torso pieces, and they move when you move the shoulders. I love how they were able to get that on such a small figure. It's such a nice little detail in the posing. It makes it so much more fun to actually stand this guy up on a desk and play with him. The new ones are definitely winners for me. The old ones have their place for sure, and I will be keeping them, but the new ones just blow them out of the water. They feel nicer mostly. They pose better, they look better, they transform nicer, etc. If you were debating on which ones to get, I'd say the Studio Series because they're just more worth it in my opinion, but the cost of importing has really hurt that for us here because the whole world has gone in disarray, and now my deluxes cost $44 at Toys R Us. I'm really shocked by how much I like the new ones over the old ones. I went into this knowing I would like the new ones more because the old ones, like, I never liked the Dark Moon Sideswipe, and Cannon B just hasn't aged well. But when I got Sideswipe and B, they were so much better than I was expecting. I haven't had this much fun with a Studio Series Deluxe till Sideswipe. I still mess with him, even though I just got Challenger, Perukil, Chigur, and my Lahire just didn't show up, so that's concerning. Please, TF Safari, answer my email. But Sideswipe has stayed my desk toy for a very long time because his posing is just the most fun I've had in a while with a Studio Series Deluxe. It's insane. But let me know which ones you guys prefer in the comments below. I'm always curious, just like the last few videos. And again, keep it civil. I appreciate the civility of the last ones, so just keep it civil here. And if there's any other aesthetics you want to see side by side, let me know too. I'm hoping that those new Unicron Trilogy toys that are rumored to come out with Legacy come out this year, because I'd love to get those in the original counterparts and take a look at them side by side, because that would be fun. But that's been my look at these four figures and the comparison between the two. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.